very fancy, I don't know where to look. When I was told that this was a breeding ground for future bureaucracy, I said, now I know who to blame. You know, you gave me a beautiful bouquet of flowers to welcome me, but wherever I go, they usually give you flowers, and I always say to them that, you know, flowers are dead things. So to start a relationship, one should never give anybody flowers. One should give a podha, you know, a small potted plant, because that then and then when you plant it into a tree, isn't that? What does it mean to be a young Indian today? What does it mean to be a citizen? What does democracy really mean? What is citizen intervention? What is the historicity of all of this? I just want to get to this. In the 1960s, ships carrying PL-480 wheat were coming to India from the United States. And suddenly they turned around and went elsewhere. And it was attributed to the fact that the then Prime Minister, Srimati Indira Gandhi, had criticized America's intervention in Vietnam. And when the then President Lyndon Johnson was asked why this special censure was really given to India when Secretary General of the UN, Yu Thant, the Pope, etc., had all criticized this war, he said, well, they don't eat our wheat. You know, we've had times in our country where late Prime Minister Shastri had to request the country to eat once a day so that there would be enough for all. And if a far-sighted agriculture minister, Sri Subramaniam, had not gone to Mexico and really got that hybrid for us, so many more people in our country would be starving today and the Green Revolution would never have happened. But we've come a long way since then. Today, we are arguably the second or the third largest producer of wheat and rice in the world. Although our population has tripled, 5 times rice production has tripled and wheat production has gone 15 times. So we really have made some headway. When we look at the 1980s, to jump forward, we had towards the end of the 80s, the beginning of the 90s, we had a huge economic crevice that we were going to fall into. All of you remember that we were unable to pay our loans to the World Bank, and we had to take an emergency loan from the IMF to pay the 1,200 crores that we needed to pay. And we had to pledge 67 tons of gold to do so. Former Prime Minister Chandrasekhar ji got a lot of flack for doing it, but I think, frankly, anybody in his position would have done the same. But we're not quite in that state anymore. Today we're 9th in the world in nominal GDP. By 2050, we will have the 3rd largest GDP in the world. According to the World Bank's global economic prospects, we are the 4th fastest growing economy in the world. And if you just look at 1991, which is the date that I'm talking about, and now, and just look at 2 indicators, which is foreign investment and foreign reserves. In 91, we had foreign investments of 0.07 billion. And in 2016, we had foreign investments of 371 billion. And our foreign reserves, which were 5 billion, 5.8 billion actually in 91, are now 361 billion. So we've come a long way. But yet they remain very glaring questions that need to be answered. Last year, a retired teacher from Rajasthan, Deep Chand Sharma, wrote a letter to the Prime Minister's office, and he said that upon my retirement, I shall pledge a cheque of 1 lakh rupees to the poorest person in India. Could you kindly find that person and connect me with them? After 2 months, he got a letter saying, I'm sorry, we have no record of the poorest people in this country, which in itself is very ironical, considering we have the largest amount of poor people in the world in India, approximately 29.5% of our population. I think the figure is about 370 million odd people. Just last month, I was in Punjab and we went to Fatehgarh Sahib, and we went to the house of a farmer who had killed himself because of the social stigma of what in Hindi you call ghar ki kurki lagana. They had locked his house, and because he was unable to pay a loan of 52,000 rupees, he had not only killed himself, but he killed his whole family, which in South India, in Northeast, in parts of Northern India, particularly in Rajasthan, etc., are things that, and in Bundelkhand, of course, you hear about almost all the time. And they didn't even have money to cremate him, which, is the saddest part of all. For the last few months, all of you have seen in the national capital farmers from Tamil Nadu sitting and exhorting farmers all over the country from Jantar Mantar. And I was one of the few MPs that visited, and in their hand they had skulls of other farmers from Tamil Nadu who had committed suicide. They drank their own urine just to protest against the horrific way in which farmers in India have been treated, not just for the last 5 years, but for the last hundreds of years. And yet, the same month, the Tamil Nadu Assembly gave to itself a 200% pay hike for all its MLAs. I found it really shameful, and I gave a speech in Parliament saying the time has come where members of Parliament and MLAs of state assemblies should not arrogate to themselves the power to increase their salary at will. There needs to be some constitutional amendment, some statutory mechanism whereby eminent persons, academics, retired judiciary, retired bureaucracy can decide whether members of Parliament, members of Legislative Assembly deserve a pay hike, what will it cost to the exchequer, what will be the In the last 5 years, members of Parliament have increased their own salary by 400%. And nearly every single statistic shows that over the last 10 years, Parliament has functioned in the most appallingly mediocre manner. However, this is not a speech on political reform. It is a speech on different kinds of justice and the way to get there. Coming back to how rich people have been treated in this country. So we have approximately 8 lakh crores of NPAs with government-owned banks in our country. And of that, I just want to say that 12 accounts, just 12 accounts in our country account for 27% of all NPAs. Just 12 rich people. I don't want to take any names here. This is not a witch hunt. That should be left to my role in Parliament. But at the same time, I do want to say that out of these 12 people, I read in a magazine last month that one of them had their daughter married in Italy, and the marriage cost 500 crore rupees. I wrote a letter, of course it was not answered, to the finance minister. I said, sir, I want to know how many farmers, small entrepreneurs, labor, artisans have been arrested for non-payment of dues, and how many people amongst the top 10 defaulters have been arrested in our country? The truth is, 2 of them have been arrested. And how long have they been arrested for? One for 4 hours and one for 24 hours. So let's just say that the laws are not quite equal for all. When we look at the inequality gap, Professor Saxena ji said that 1% of people in India own 58% of assets. It's true, except now the figure is 59.8%. So we're actually doing worse and worse as we go along. The country is becoming more unequal. Just to flag 2 issues, the bottom 70% of Indians just own 7% of Indian assets, and 57 billionaires in India, 57 billionaires own more assets than the bottom 60% of India combined. 57% of people own more assets than the bottom 60% of Indians combined. If we want to look at whether we're becoming more equal or more unequal, I just have 2 things I'd like to say. One, the average value of assets held by a household in our country has risen to approximately 2.6, 2.8 crore rupees over the last 10 years. So it's a good raise. It is 50,000 times the amount of assets of a person in the lowest 10% of India. 50,000 times the amount of assets. If you look at a country like Japan, the figure is just about 280% to 360% more. When we look at inequality in earnings, so if you take the earnings of the top 10% of India and the bottom 10% of India, in 1970, the top 10% of India earned 12 times more, earned 6 times more than the bottom 10% of India. Today, the bottom 10% is 12 times less than the top 10%. So we're exactly double as unequal as we need to be. You know, where everybody's talking about demographic dividend, everybody's talking about young people, but you know, the truth is not as rosy as it's made out to be. In our country, more than 30% of the 13 crore people, 13 crore people, which is 30% of the people aged between 15 and 40, are neither employed nor in education and nor have any training. I asked a question in Parliament. I said, I want to know what is the kind of training that is being most espoused today in this new skill development ministry. And I said, I only want to know it for the state of Uttar Pradesh because I am elected from there and I just want to know what projects are going on there. And I was amazed by the answer. So the answer was that the #1 training that is being given in the state of Uttar Pradesh by the Ministry of Skill Development is for the job of a chowkidar. Now I was a bit befuddled by this because I said a chowkidar is just a guy in a uniform. What is the training that is imparted to a chowkidar? Is any particular skill set imparted to him? If he gets kicked out of that job, can he use those quote-unquote skills to get employed elsewhere? If you're a cook, you're a driver, you have a skill set, right? If you're a chowkidar, I mean, of the 430 million young people in India, 86% drop out of school after the age of 15. Only 2% can access formal training. One of the aspects that I wanted to look at today is how young people are the answer, not how young people are the question. In a small village in Uttarakhand in the 1970s, Chandri Prasad Bhatt and Sundarlal Bahuguna began the Chipko Andolan. And as you can understand, it was a particularly difficult time to start a movement because there was no internet, there were no cellular phones, for that matter, there were very few phones in the hills. And it was mainly the women actually that went door to door, village to village and said, these trees are our future, these trees are our protection, these trees are our gods, and we have to save them. And the Chipko Andolan went so viral, to use a modern word, that the then Uttar Pradesh government, led by Narendra Tiwari, actually put a stop to tree felling for 10 years. But today it's a wonderful time to be young and to be an activist. Look at what happened in Bangalore, where the steel flyover was going to be made, and young people in Bangalore said that 1,800 of the oldest and the largest and most important trees are going to be cut, and we're going to agitate against this. And they made a social media group on Facebook and on WhatsApp, and they said anybody that is agitated about this can please put their name or give a missed call. And 1 lakh people gave missed calls in one day, and then it raised their level of confidence, and they said now anybody else that wants to come forward, we're doing a human chain to show our strength around these trees. And in 2 days' time, on a Sunday, 16,000 young people went on the roads in Bangalore, and because of that, the chief minister had to then say, okay, I stand down, we're going to find a new way to build the steel flyover. And I thought it was an amazing strength of young people that was demonstrated. And it's not always posh or people from big metros that can do anything. In Telangana, there was a place I went in Medak called district called Vemula Ghat, where there was the poorest people in our country protesting the Malana Sagar Reservoir project for 3 reasons. 1, it was going to drown about 24 villages. 2, the land acquisition that they were following, which was an order called GO 123, was violative of the Land Acquisition Act 2013. And 3, the amount of money that they were getting in terms of compensation was A, not enough as per the market value of the land, and B, it was not given to more than about 15% of the population. So they protested, they did a hunger strike for 150 days continuously, but nobody listened. And then they filed right to information, they went to the information commissioner, they went to court, and finally in Hyderabad, the High Court ruled in the favor of the poor people, and they said that number 1, you have to give compensation to landless people, to artisans, to sharecroppers, to all of them. You have to give the market rate of the land, which is about 17 lakh rupees an acre versus about 4 lakh rupees an acre, etc., etc. And they won. And these people who had no education, who had very little money, they were able to fight the state and win. In Maharashtra, an amazing example is a small block in Nasik district called Sinnar. Sinnar was called the driest block in Maharashtra because not even one crop used to grow properly there in the 1960s and 70s. And at that time, a 70-year-old woman called Thakubai Gurule said, I don't want to die just having lived a life with no deeper meaning. And she said, I want to do something for this earth. And so she said, we will start digging wells and we will start with water conservation, water harvesting. And this was much before water harvesting was fashionable. And she said, we will start digging wells in each village, and I will go from village at this age of 72. And they dug 25,000 wells in the block, which is an amazing thing. I've seen it myself. And because of that, over the next 10 to 15 years, when it was, massively irrigated, it became the most fertile land in the whole state. And from having almost no crops a year, they started having 2 to 3 crops every year. And in fact, grape cultivation started from this block. But of course, politicians, like all scavengers, went and started looking at this as a crucial way to make money. And suddenly India Bulls moved in and got an SEZ. Now I'm totally against the concept of SEZs. SEZs all over the world are a hugely failed concept, have never resulted in any amount of money for local people, never resulted in local jobs, and never really resulted in anything except taking people's fertile land, giving it for large godowns and factories, which then stopped working 10, 15, 20 years later anyway. In any case, to cut a long story short, an agitation was started by this lady and her son, Ramnath Gurule, who then said that we are going to resist in a peaceful Gandhian manner. And they went forward, and when finally the people from India Bulls came to take possession of the land, over 150,000 women sat in their fields and said that we will consume poison, pesticide, fertilizer, and do a mass suicide, and this will be on your hand. And of course, judging the public mood, they moved back. My point is not that we should be thinking of drastic action at every given point. But my point is, today you have more than 15 crore people on WhatsApp in our country. You have approximately the same on Facebook. The opportunity for mass mobilization for positive ends is endless today. If everybody here listening to me just decides to write into their local MP saying, why has this not been done? Or decides to file an RTI, or decides to go on a local television channel and agitate against something, or decides to plant a tree, a fruit-bearing tree today, then this country would be the richer for it. I want to talk very briefly just about how inequality is perpetuated through education and through healthcare. When we look at education, one of the first things we need to look at is this trend towards private education. Now, I'm in favor of an increased private education because it leads to a greater, qualitative slant for young people to go forward. But how many people can really afford private education in our country? So in the last 10 years, we've gone from 72% people going to government schools for primary education to 62% going to government schools for primary education. But if you look at the urban statistics in our country, we have gone just in the NCR, we have gone from 2000 to 2017 from 61% of people going to government schools for primary and secondary education, now only to 31% of people going to government schools in primary and secondary education, just in the NCR, but also this extrapolates to much of urban India, Mumbai, Calcutta, etc. But the fact is not that there is a gulf and it's widening, it's how much it's widening. I mean, everybody talks about NPAs, right? Everybody says NPAs, but how many people here know about education NPAs? Do you know that in the last 15 years, the education NPAs have gone to 4,800 crores in our country. So that means middle class people, lower middle class people, poor people who are desperate to give their children a decent education, taking loans of 70,000 and 1 lakh and 1,50,000 and then not being able to pay it and defaulting. In Kerala, I heard a terrible example of a person called Katie Joseph who wanted to make his daughter a nurse, and he took a 3.25 lakh rupee loan. And they paid, and she did become a nurse in the district hospital, but as you know, district hospitals don't pay very much. And so they paid it back slowly, and 50,000 rupees, 54,000 rupees of it was pending. And this poor man was put in jail. He was humiliated, his house was raided, and he was put in jail. And finally, he had to even sell the vessels in his house to pay back this loan. I'm just amazed that this treatment would only be given to middle class people and to poorer people in our country. And for education, that too, one would think that we must be lenient on things like education loans and healthcare loans, because everybody who goes to poorer sections of India will tell you that the dreams of the next generation that follow us, as you know better than me, lie on the education that they receive and the security that they receive through this treasure that is education. When we even look at, when we look at healthcare, this is even worse, because in our country, 1 crore people fall below the below poverty line every year. 1 crore people, because of out-of-pocket expenditure on healthcare costs. 1 crore people every year. And while it's true that the share of government expenditure as a percentage of total expenditure on healthcare has gone up from 22% to 29% in the last 5 years, it is still a very, very small percentage as when looked at in global comparisons. Just for instance, when we look at the amount of household money that is spent on pharmaceuticals, on pharmacies, on medicines, we can see that in our country, 1.5 lakh crore every year goes to pharmacies. The amount of money that government spends as a percentage on for medicines in terms of in terms of national spending is just 4%. So 96% of money that is being spent on medicines is being spent by people out of their own pocket. Now to you and me, it seems an obvious thing that, okay, if we're ill, we will buy a paracetamol or Digene or whatever. But think of the person who is lying outside All India Medical Institute for 1 month, 2 months, 4 months, and waiting for their quote-unquote treatment. And when they're told that, I'm sorry, you have to spend 5,000 rupees every week on medicines, think of the amount of people in India that just drop dead because they cannot afford the amount of money on medication. Forget the treatment. In China, 40% of all pharmaceutical spending or pharmacy spending is done by the state. In France and Germany and UK, it's 75%. There you have an NHS, etc., but we should too. When you look at the average household income in our country being between 5,000 and 10,000 rupees a month, even the most basic treatment at a government hospital can set you back extraordinarily. Now, for instance, according to the Insurance Regulatory and Development Authority in India, 86% of the rural population and 80% of the urban population in India have no insurance. They have no healthcare insurance, and so therefore they have absolutely no immunity if they fall in financial terms. So, and if you compare it, I'm not even comparing it with countries like Norway and Sweden. If you even compare it with a BRICS country like South Africa, The out-of-pocket expenditure in South Africa is just 12.5%. And you see, the fact is that when you fall ill, you either take a loan or you dip into your life savings. In India, the statistic is 78% of people dip into their life savings. That means break, FDs, etc. when they fall ill. And all of you know this because your families at some point or the other have been through this. I mean, if you go to a private hospital if you have a heart attack and you go to a private hospital in Delhi, the heart attack may not kill you, but the bill will certainly, and the estimates that are spent, 8,000 crores has been spent on government hospitals by Indians in the last 1 year. 64,000 crores has been spent on private hospitals. This is not a statistic that we should be proud of as a country. And in the last 10 years, 3.2% of Indians have fallen below the poverty line just because of healthcare costs. I mean, I'm a member of parliament. You go to your constituency, you go to any constituency, and 75% of the people who come to you will come to you for some help in healthcare spend. And they will say that my father has fallen ill, my daughter has fallen ill, and we have sold everything we have. We have sold our land, we have sold our cattle, we have done everything we could, and now she is still suffering. You tell me what to do. And you don't know what to tell. That's true. While all these figures make one think, the most important thing in our country today is that we are a young nation. And I see, and I've been writing this book which will be out next year, which is The Economic Future of Indian Villages. And it's a dense economic work. But in order to write it, I had to travel very extensively for the last 2 years, and will travel this year as well. And I've come across examples of the most extraordinary young people and how they've given back to society. And I'd like to tell you about this because this ties in with our larger theme of justice. I went to a village in Murshidabad district in West Bengal, which is now I think called Bengal, called Bhakta. And there was a boy who's now become very famous called Babar Ali. And Babar, when he was 9 years old, was the only person in his village that was going to school. And he would go to school because he realized the unfairness of all this. So he would go, and every day he would come back, and whatever he was taught that day, he would teach everybody in his village that day what he was taught. And they would sit under a guava tree, and he would teach everybody. And slowly, his fame and his respect grew. And people started thinking this was an amazing thing that was happening, a kid teaching other kids. And more people started coming, and somebody would give a bit of chalk, and somebody would give paper and a blackboard and pen, and it started continuing. Until CNN heard of him. And CNN gave him $100,000 as a reward for being a young change maker. Now, anybody else whose father was a very small jute farmer, anybody else would have bought land, bought a house, bought a car. But what did Baba do? He built a school for 1,000 children in his village, which was absolutely free. And the condition was that you come and you learn, but every day when you go back to your village, because his village is a small one, you need to teach 5 to 10 children that day. So you pay it forward. And Murshidabad, and Murshidabad, which was dead last in Bengal in terms of education statistics, is now somewhere in the top 8-9. So it shows that one person can make a difference, and that one person is you, all of you. I want to give you an example of, everybody knows the example of Professor Anand Kumar. And I had gone to see Super 30 in Patna, and I'd heard a lot about it. But you know, one, in politics and life, you grow cynical. You read about these examples, and a lot of you are thinking, and I'm thinking, that I don't know if this is really all that it's cracked up to be. I don't know if this is really all that people say it is. And I was staying at some hotel in Patna, and I remember there was a very fancily dressed person in a suit and tie, and he was getting into some foreign car. And then I saw him at Super 30, and I said, oh, have you come here to have a look at this, to study it? And he said, no, 10 years ago I used to study here. And I said, okay, where do you live now? And he said, I live in Belgium, and I'm the #2 of GlaxoSmithKline, which is one of the world's largest pharmaceutical companies. And I said, did you come from a better off family? He said, no, actually, my story is even stranger. He said, there's a place near Patna called Bikram. And he said that my father used to sell vegetables on a patri, on a rail line somewhere there. And he said, I just had this fascination for mathematics and a fascination for learning, but I really didn't know how to go about it since I was completely destitute. So I went to Professor Anand Kumar and I said, sir, if you'll have me, I'll do your household work also, and if you teach me. And he said he kept me in his house for 6 years, and today I'm in Belgium. I've come back to now have a scholarship ready for 50 students so that they achieve the future of their dreams. And I just thought it was an amazing thing. And everywhere in India you go, you see that in the worst possible circumstances, people are the bravest. You know, you go to the northeast, you go to Kashmir, you go to Bastar, you go to any part of this country, Bundelkhand, where you find people have not been given a fair share, and you find the extraordinary courage that they emit, and persistently, not just as a one-off. I want to give you an example of an amazing person called Shrikant Bola. You may have heard of this. Shrikant was born blind. He was born completely blind. And he wanted to study science. And he enrolled to study science, and then they said, no, you can't study science because you're blind. So how will you do the experiments? How will you sit for all this? I'm sorry, you can't do it. So he went to court. And he was born in a small village called Sitaramapuram in erstwhile Andhra Pradesh. And he went to court, and the court ruled in his favor. It said his child can study whatever he wants to study. So he studied science, and he got 99 point something %. And he topped the whole state board. And then he wanted to get into IIT. And when he went to give the exam in IIT said, I'm sorry, we can't have you because you're blind. So how will you live on campus? How will you eat? You'll have to have a minder with you. We don't have a system like that. So I'm sorry, you can't come into IIT. So he said, all right. So he applied to MIT. And MIT gave him a full scholarship. And he's the only Indian in MIT who ever topped MIT. He topped MIT and got his own medal. And he was completely blind, is completely blind. And after graduating at the top of your class in MIT, you can understand that the job offers are flowing. So everybody went to him. Google went to him, Oracle went to him, HP went to him, Apple went to him and said, come and work with us, please. And he said, no, I don't want anybody else to go through what I went through in India. And he came back and he set up a company called Bolland Industries. And today it's a 200 crore company. And the amazing thing about this company is that 70% of people that work for it are either blind or they're disabled in some severe manner. And the thing is, you don't need to be very old to make a change. On the border of Punjab and Haryana, I came across a girl called Bisman Deo. And there's an amazing example of how Delhi, one of the reasons for Delhi's severe pollution is the burning of rice husk at the end of every cropping season in large parts of North India. And realizing this girl from a village said, why can't we test this husk? And why can't we test it for its properties? Is it good for anything? Can it be used for anything? So they found that it had a very high silica content, and that it was, insect resistant. It was actually water resistant, and there was a lot that they could do for it. And so she actually went to Punjab University, and which is a very good university, and she said, would you actually test this to see whether we can make a wood out of it? And they did help her, and they created and patented something called green wood. And Hewlett-Packard, hearing about this, has now sanctioned 5,000 houses to be built for the poorest people, to knock their cancerous asbestos houses down and to build green wood houses for them, which will be environmentally sustainable, cheap, and actually get rid of that byproduct which is just otherwise causing waste and pollution. One of the things that we, in politics, you hear about young people, because young people have become a major catchword. Everyone's talking about, how the youth are going to do this, the youth is going to do this, but you really don't see that many young people in politics. So just to give you a statistic, the average age now of a young person has gone from 37 in 1952 to 24. But the average age of a parliamentarian has gone from 1952, which was the first elected parliament, from 46 years to this parliament, where the average age was 59 years. So yeah, India is becoming younger, but our politics is becoming older. Unfortunately, the truth of the matter is, unless you have a famous last name like mine, you really will not get an entry into politics. My name is Varun Gandhi, but if my name was Varun Agarwal or Khan or Sharma or whatever, the truth is I wouldn't be standing here today. I wouldn't have got a ticket. I wouldn't have been entertained by anybody. And so because we know these things, and because we're beneficiaries of this unequal system, therefore we have to work 10 times as hard to make sure that the next generation is more equal. And it's, because the fact is that wherever you go in India, you find an abundance of talent and an abundance of discipline. I'm amazed that I came here and I found this hall completely packed. And that just is a credit to all of you for your discipline and for your desire to learn. How can we make a difference? What are the kinds of people making a difference? I want to give you 2 examples. How many ladies are here today? How many ladies are here? So, about 40%. Right? I want to tell you about 2 women that I've seen. I want to tell you about 2 women that I've seen and I met, who came from the poorest sections of India, and what an amazing change they made. Everybody's heard of Champaran, where Gandhiji started his experiments in Bihar. So I went to Champaran and I met this lady who was called Tanju Devi, and she had a little shop selling moongfali and all outside the Gandhi ashram in Champaran. And she had become a hero. And why had she become a hero? Because in Bihar they have something called the National Social Assistance Program, Rashtriya Samaj Sahayata Yojana, and it was given to people of lower caste, people of disabilities, women, BPL, etc., etc. Except one day it had just stopped, and it stopped for about almost a year. And a foreign student from JNU who spoke Hindi had gone, because he was doing his PhD on Gandhiji, and he had gone to Champaran, and he asked this lady, could you show me here, could you show me there, and she showed him around. And he then said, okay, I have a Sony Handycam, so I want to give it to you so that you can take cute videos of your kids or whatever you want. And she did not use it for that. What did she do? She went house to house and she collected 5, 10, 20-second clips of young people, of old people, of women, of the poorest of the poor, saying that I'm so and so, I'm from this village and I've not got my yojana for so much time. And because of this one amazing woman, Tanju Devi, 1.4 crore people in the state got this yojana later. And what did they find? Because she then went and gave it to the DM, who then gave it to the Chief Minister, and the Chief Minister thought it was so amazing that a woman had gone from village to village over 1 year and just persistently taken people's accounts and made like tapes of them and kept them. And why had this happened? Why had the yojana not gone? Because the office was being shifted from one place to the other, so they lost all the files and all the, computerization of information, which is really so unbelievable. So when you become bureaucrats, please be more sensitized to that sort of thing, and don't get too in love with your big colonial mansions and people doing salami to you every time. But I will do salami to you, so as to get my work done. Another amazing woman is called Shimla Kumari, which is in my contiguous district of Ambedkar Nagar in UP. And Shimla Kumari was a laborer at a brick kiln. She's 24-year-old. And one day she went to her thekedar, to her boss, and she said, I haven't been paid for a week and we're supposed to be paid every day. So he gave her a whack and he said, get out. And then she felt very insulted and she felt cheated. And most people would just keep quiet and go back to their home or go to another brick kiln. But she went to the local labor commissioner and she said that, I'm not going to stand for this and I want my money. And he said, okay, how much money do you get after doing a full day's work? And she said, I get 70 rupees a day. And he said, wait a minute, you're not supposed to get 70 rupees, you're supposed to get 150 rupees. And she said, nahi, wo mardon ko milta hai. She said, the men get 150 rupees and the women get 70 rupees for the same exact work every day. And she said this, and he said there's something very wrong with this. So he made her, he gave her a car and he said, you are now to go everywhere and you are to talk to women for the next 3 months. And you are to tell me how many women have been cheated in this manner, and I will make a record of all the money that has to be paid to the women of this district while I'm here. And just because of that one woman's achievement, not even a woman, a 24-year-old girl, from the poorest of the poor, she was a Balmiki, which you can understand, is a very deprived community of its rights, of its economic and social rights. And she went to all manner of people and she said that I want you to tell me how many hours you've worked, if you can remember, how much you've been paid, and do the mathematics. And because of her, they paid 6 crore rupees out to the poorest women of that Ambedkar Nagar district because of the family. Am I talking too much? Should I stop now? Just give me 10 minutes. We often don't realize the weapons at our disposal. Yale University did an interesting study in Delhi where they wanted to talk about, they wanted to investigate rather, what is the meaning of a RTI, right? What is the meaning of it? So what they did was, they got an area in Delhi called Bhalaswa, Jahangirpuri, which I think is near here. And then what they did was, they said, okay, we are going to make 4 groups of people who don't have a ration card. So one of them will be people who do nothing, they just apply normally. One group of people will give a recommendation from an NGO The third group of people will pay a bribe, and the fourth group of people will actually file an RTI request along with their application. And they found that in the 11 months of Yale University's survey, the first two groups did not get their ration card. But the people who paid the bribe and the people who submitted an RTI application because it spooked the bureaucrats and the local administration a little bit, got their ration card in about a month and a half's time. You know, a lot of you know about the example of Pushpa Kamla Hingorani, right? So, you know, I'm just an amazing example. I don't need to repeat the whole thing, but a woman, you know, finds out that there are so many people in Patna and in Muzaffarpur in jail. Well, actually, that time there were only 18 people that she was investigating, 6 of them women. And she says, you know, how can we get these people free? Because they've been in jail for longer than their sentence would have been had they been convicted, right? And at that time, you could not file for them according to Indian law. You couldn't file a petition for them unless you were a relative. So she filed a habeas corpus on their behalf, and it was called the Husainara Khatun case, and 40,000 people who were awaiting their trials and yet had got no judicial remedy were then free because they had been in jail for that long. And you know, what is happening is that there is a need to transform citizen engagement and governance in our country, because that is the fastest way to justice. I've always had this beef with political accountability. I mean, the fact that, you know, we had this case called Lily Thomas versus Union of India, whereby in 2013, whereby if you get convicted of a serious wrongdoing for more than 2 years, you are immediately to leave your seat that you occupy, whether MP, MLA, corporator, etc. And at that very time, in Rajya Sabha, the then government moved an amendment, the Representation of People's Amendment Act, Second Amendment Validation Bill 2013, to say that this should be struck down because a certain person who shall go unnamed was being, you know, his verdict was coming in a fodder scam case, and they wanted to protect him. And of course, under public pressure, they had to withdraw it. But it gives public servants a really bad name. I mean, I put in a private member's bill about right to recall, which I'm very serious about. Because the fact is, look, what is the role of citizenry in India? We have to decide, right? Is the role of citizenry to press a button once in 5 years? Or is being a citizen, which actually is a, you know, an ancient word which was empowered or imbued with a lot of power? Not everybody, as you know, Professor, was a citizen back in Roman times and Greco-Roman times. So the fact is that in today, we have a lacuna in which we speak for citizens in very golden words, and yet citizens have no power to speak for themselves. But things are changing. There's local media, there's PIL, there's RTI, there's the judiciary. You know, there is hope out there today which our parents' generation did not have. And we are empowered in new ways. I just want to give you 2 or 3 examples about this. In Latvia, erstwhile Russia, USSR, 23-year-old girls, 2 girls, as a joke wrote to the president, the prime minister, and said, if we get 20% of our country in Latvia to agree on one issue, and they called it Mana Bals, my voice, then will you initiate a debate in parliament? He said no, and as a joke he wrote back an email And he said, if you get 20% of Latvia to agree on one issue, I will put it to vote to make it a law in the parliament. And because this was then taken very seriously, of course Latvia is a poor country, I mean it's a small country, it only has 20 lakh people. But at the same time, these two girls have now made a movement, and they have made 16 laws in the last 3 years just by themselves. You know, I was talking about how young people can't get into politics and the public life. So Jordan has actually a ministry called the Ministry of Political Development, where they actually go and interview young people in every block of the country. And they find people who are brave, who are energetic, who have a vision, and then they say, okay, which party would you like to be a part of? You know, which ideology do you represent? And then they recommend them to those parties, and they recommend at least 500 people per district every year. And they say that we recommend that you put these people in your outfit. And so there's a constant infusion of new blood, and it's not stuck. In Pakistan, actually I found a very interesting example called by a girl called Sadia Khatri, who posted a picture of herself and her friends at a dhaba, and she hashtagged it on Instagram called Girls at Dhabas. Now this may sound very silly to you, but you know, the thing is that in our countries, particularly in the subcontinent, there are very archaic gender roles. You know, and there is a very subversive male patriarchy that you can see by the fact that there are 4 men and 1 lady sitting here. But at the same time, the fact is that what she wanted to show was not just to break through these archaic roles, but also to make public places more women-friendly, right? I mean, I eat at dhabas all the time when I'm going up and down, you know, places. I never ever see any women there, except when they're accompanied by their husbands, you know, or their brothers. Think about it, right? So, are public places in 2017 in India not safe for women? Or can women not dare to actually do that? So they hashtagged this, and it went completely viral in Pakistan. And I'm very proud of these people for doing so. And then these women, girls at dhabas became a very strong community. And then they became a little braver, and now they've made something called Girls on Bikes, which is very brave, and it's a new campaign. You know, but it's all in the same direction, as you can see, which is wonderful. Lastly, I want to talk about young people helping themselves by helping other people. Social entrepreneurship. All of you would like to make a change, but you would also like to be financially secure. And there's nothing wrong with wanting that. And so I want to talk about a few examples of just people I've seen along the way. I met an amazing person called Dhruv Lakra in Bombay, and in 2006 he was on a bus, and he saw a deaf and dumb person sitting there, and he thought to himself, what can this person achieve in life? You know, what can this person do? How can he earn a decent you know, existence? And he said, that's very difficult. And then when he went home that same day, somebody had come to him to deliver a courier. And he saw courier service is one thing where you don't need to speak, where you don't need to hear. And he started something called miracle couriers, just for people who can't speak and who can't hear, in the city of Mumbai. And today, there are 500 people just in Mumbai and Pune and Greater Mumbai, Thane, etc. There are 500 people who are deaf and dumb, who are earning at least 20 to 25,000 rupees a month in this miracle courier service. Another young person that I came about is my friend Durgesh Nandan, who now lives in Bombay and used to live in Delhi, and then before that in Ghazipur and then in Lucknow. And Durgesh Nandan started a automotion ads, whereby, because he saw that people who drive auto rickshaws and three-wheelers, they don't have the ownership of those vehicles, and they drive them for 16 hours, 18 hours a day, almost like slaves, and yet they never own them. Some Sethji owns them somewhere. And they said, he said, can we create a system where these people have a more empowered existence, where at least they own the asset and control the asset that they drive. And so what he did was he created this company called Automotion Ads, whereby 50% of the money that you can advertise on the vehicle, 50% of it goes to the driver, 25% goes to Durgesh Nandan, and 25% goes to the owner, who was happy because he was getting money, that was untapped before. And just because of this, in the cities of Kanpur, in the cities of Lucknow, in the cities of Banaras and Bareilly, etc., you today have 700 people who own their auto rickshaws in the last 5 years, who could never dream of owning their own vehicles, and today they have an existence of self-respect and dignity, which is the most important human condition there is. There's lots of government schemes. You always hear about government schemes, good government schemes, but how many people really hear about them? Very few, right? Because A, people may not be literate enough, or they might be perfectly literate, but they might not have the confidence to go to the district administration and actually liaise with them and talk to them and say, hey, what about me? Why am I not getting my right? So a young person in Maharashtra made a mobile phone platform you must look at called Hak Darshak. And what Hak Darshak does is, if you put your gender, your age, your name, your caste, your financial condition, and proof of it, and pay a nominal amount like 10 rupees, what it will do is, it will list all the government schemes that you're entitled to, both center and state. For a further 50 rupees, what it does is it will coordinate with that government department, and it will ensure that that money is then deposited in your account. And I wasn't really sure whether this worked. So yesterday I found one of the phone numbers of women who had reportedly benefited from this, from Hamirpur in Himachal Pradesh. And I called up this lady and I said, your name is there, is it real? At first she couldn't believe that it was me calling her, but when she said hi and stuff, and then she said that yes, I used to get 1100 rupees a month, and now because of this I get 3400 rupees a month, which I thought was great. And lastly, I just want to give an example of a person called Navneet Ranjan, who is in America, and I think he was at Harvard actually, and he came back to do a documentary in Dharavi, which is the largest slum in Asia, in Mumbai. And Mumbai is an amazing city because it has the richest people in India and it has the poorest people in India. And so, but at the same time, he said, I'll do a documentary. And then he said, what's the use of doing a documentary? How is it going to help these people? It's just, in a way, just prostituting their poverty, right? So he said, I'm not going to do this. I'm actually going to help them. And so first he started taking classes just with the girls, because he found that the girls were much more, much more disadvantaged than the boys, who actually did go to school, most of them. And when he did that, he found that even that wasn't helping them, because more than science and history and physics and mathematics, they actually needed to learn something that would empower them financially right now. So he taught them computer coding, and he taught them how to make apps on MIT App Inventor. And I was looking at some of the apps that have done extraordinarily well on Google Play Store, Apple, etc. And I just want to tell you about two of them, and they're both by young girls. One is a 15-year-old girl called Fawzia Aslam Ansari, who's made an amazing app which has actually been sold 100,000 times, called Pani Hai Jeevan. So what it does is that she liaises with valve engineers and pump engineers and tells you the next day when the water will come and for how long it will come. And so, because you know, in small towns, in slums, in areas of lower income group housing, there's a lot of fighting about water. And there's a lot of time wasting, you know, because people will sit there for hours not knowing when the water will come, and the women of the house will spend, you know, 3-4 hours every day. And so this tells you, and it forms an online queue for you. So it tells you, okay, today 1,200 people have signed up for water, and your turn today is 12:24 to 12:48, and please be there at that time, because after you is that person, before you is that person. I thought it was amazing. And then another 15-year-old girl called Ansuja Madhiwan, who made an app called Women Fight Back. And this is an app that basically does location mapping for women in distress, women who are being harassed or eve-teased, and it has 100 of your emergency contacts listed, and immediately an emergency alarm or an SMS alert goes out to them, to 100 people who you know. It then sends an alert out to your nearest police station, that your nearest geographical police station, and it also sends out a distress alarm where you are and location mapping. And I thought it was amazing for a 15-year-old girl to have done this, and that also has sold a lot of times. And the last thing is feeding people, because I think this is the most sacred thing. And Ankit Quatra, who started Feeding India, who I work with, and I've actually put in a petition in Parliament saying that all the waste food in Parliament should actually be quoted, it should be cleaned, and it should be given to people, at least the slums in a 5-kilometer vicinity around Parliament, because just in Parliament every day you have lots and lots of wasted food. And so what Ankit Quatra did was, one day he was at a wedding, and as you know, in North India, the weddings are very lavish and they're very wasteful, in fact, in terms of food. And so many tons of food gets wasted every day, just thrown out. And this goes for 5-star hotels, it goes for dhabas. So he just tied up with all of these places, and he said, whatever my vans will come, and he was a 23-year-old guy, and he said, you give me your food, I will clean it, and then I will give it. And today, 10 lakh people eat meals because of this every day. I just want to end my interaction here today by saying just one thing, which is we need revolutionaries in our country. They do not need to be revolutionaries that pick up the gun, but they need to be revolutionaries that make sure that other people don't pick up the gun. They need to be people who spread kindness, who act as protection for other people, and who are agents of goodness. All of us at some point realize that this is a finite entity, this thing called life. And we have about 30 to 40 years in our life where we can really give back actively. This is your time, and this is my time. This is our time. And I just want to end with a proverb that means a lot to me, which is that if you want to go fast, walk alone. But if you want to go far, let's all walk together. I want to thank you for showing me the respect of sitting here and being such an active and wonderful audience all across here and the country. And I'm delighted to be here at ALS, and I hope I get called back once again.